Welcome to Clapback with the Facts podcast, where we are providing you with the information you need to know about what's politically impacting Black women across the country. In a world filled with myths and disinformation, we provide you with the real. If you're a Black woman, representing Black women, or in the community with Black women, we are here to clap back and give you the facts. Thank you for joining Season 2, Episode 2, The New Administration, the Status of Executive Orders. We will be sharing the facts and dropping gems. So let's get ready to clap back at the facts.
Hello. Oh my God, you're back with me. Thank you for coming back and watching us. We are here for what? Season 2? Can somebody say 2 seasons? Yes. And I just found that I missed y'all. I didn't think I would miss y'all. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think I would miss. I was starting to kind of needing a break from all the things, but I'm glad to be back. And listen, I am not back by myself. I didn't even introduce myself. My name's Holly Holiday. I am here as the president of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, and I am not here alone. I am here with my peoples. Come on, Simone Henderson. Welcome her back. She decided to come back and hang out with us. Hey, Simone. Hey.
Hey, y'all.
And guess who else decided to come back? Chantel Mullen. Come on, girl. Hey, girl. Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
I feel like we come back. It's been a new year. We are now approaching finishing more than 60 days under the Trump administration. And I wonder, I think before we even get into, I think the thing that we have to institute in this season is, how y'all doing? We got to have a check-in time. How y'all doing?
Taking it hour by hour because you don't know what's going to happen.
Chantel, go ahead, Chantel.
I was just going to say, you know what? I'm good. I think going through season 1 was very helpful in preparing for whatever outcome we had. And so I think my biggest challenge is not so much for me, but seeing all the other people struggle with reconciling what is currently happening. I hear a lot of, I just can't believe. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. We tried to tell you, but that's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bad either. I mean, don't get me wrong. Bad stuff has happened. So I want to level set and say bad stuff has happened. Bad stuff is happening. But at the same time, I am weirdly excited to be free of not having to fight stuff right now. I don't feel like I'm in my fight stuff era. I'm in my build stuff era. I'm in my innovation era. I'm in my let's do something new era. And some of that is just not leaning into my traditional, tried and true, beat somebody up mentality or methodology. And I'm really excited to just figure out how to do something new and build something new, because I feel like we're in this moment that needs a better reaction, Okay. Well, I just want to check in with y'all, see how y'all was thinking.
It's good to see you, sis.
Thank you. I was telling y'all before we got started, I'm going to have to do something if I'm going to keep doing this with y'all, because y'all are looking like fashion plates and I'm looking like a frumpy housewife. So I'm going to have to do something with the hair, at least the hair. We got to at least kind of get something happening, because this is what I'm rocking, Lord.
You going to go blonde before the summer?
I'm going to have to do something.
Okay.
These grays, y'all. Come on now. I'm looking like the grandma on the group. All right. I do have this to say. I want to say that one of the things that we see as we go into this discussion on these executive orders, and I have to be honest, I really didn't want to talk about it, but we need to. And thank you, Simone, for pushing us because we do need to talk about it. The executive orders, the one thing I think people need to know about the executive orders is that the executive orders are designed to break stuff.
Yes.
Mess stuff up, to take stuff down, to eliminate stuff, and to do all things. But when you break stuff and when you tear it down, there comes a moment when it's time to build something back or new or better. And I'm hoping that while we are managing, discussing, and dealing with all of this chaos and confusion that the executive orders are causing, that we are also taking a time to build. So we're ready to build, we're ready to grow, expand, and do the things. All right, I have a question. Go ahead, Shanti. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying, you're right. You're right. That's all. I'm just agreeing. I'm touching and agreeing, girl. Touching and agreeing.
All right. So here's my question. I could go down the whole litany list of things that we have seen in this executive order, but I choose to start like this. What is the executive order that has given you the most consternation?
I'm going to have to go with the executive order rolling back DEI. And I think the way that that has been rolled out has been particularly nasty. I think, and just for reference, that's executive order 11246. I think, you know, all of us based here in the district and the tragedy of the plane crash that happened and then blaming that on DEI to further. If you want to roll something back, stand 10 toes deep behind while you're doing it. But to sit here and then use the tragedy to elevate that, I think was particularly nasty. And then how that has had ripple effects across so many industries, and very much to your point, Holly, of breaking something. You're firing people that have very important jobs, and we're seeing the impact of that every day. We're seeing how that's impacting not just here of people having to go back to work in offices that the office don't exist, but across the country.
Well, I don't think there's one in particular. I think it is the rolling out of them one behind the other, because the strategy is chaos, confusion, and it's designed to break people. Because people don't know what to do. And it's not just that they gave it out, but they're walking in buildings, locking people out of buildings, locking people out of emails, sending them all kind of crazy correspondence, treating people any kind of way. And then I was thinking about this today because I've seen kind of the progression of this. The dehumanization of federal workers. The dehumanization of people. It's been going on, but federal workers are just the latest group that has been thrown into that dehumanization pot. They're not people going to serve their country. They're not, veterans that are helping. They're not anybody. They have reduced federal workers down to fraud and abuse and waste. And you will hear people say they're government waste. And so they have used those executive orders really as a whip. They're whipping, they beating folks down right now. And that's the thing. And they're using, because it's not just that they've written stuff, but they've figured out how to leverage our tax dollars. Because I'm gonna remind folks, the government doesn't have any money. The money that they're using to force people to do things, that's our tax dollars being used as a weapon against us. So that's it. It's the whole concept. It's because it didn't matter what they wrote, they were going to use it in that particular way. And there's more to come. You know, they outlined in the project that don't exist that there were about 120. And so to date, you know, we're looking at 76 executive orders or more, because there's some proclamations, there's some memorandum, there's all of these things that are rolling out, and they're rolling out so fast we don't even have time to process it and respond to it and figure out what we should do, because 5 minutes later something else is coming.
But you know, to that, I think you got to emphasize that that's the point, is to overwhelm with the amount and a strategy of chaos.
Yeah.
To not know which direction to look, to not even begin.
Overwhelm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, I think, you know, not only overwhelmed, but there's a couple things I want to go in this conversation. The first place I want to go is, I think we need to help people kind of think through and understand what is. So one thing is, what should your response to these executive orders be? No, actually, let me start here. I think we also need to understand that these executive orders are not only happening at an unprecedented frequency, but they're being written with unprecedented language.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Generally speaking, when you write an executive order, when the president issues and signs an executive order, it is done so within the authority of the office of the president. The office of the president has the authority to issue executive orders, issue by executive orders directives that are intended to inform government agencies how to function and operate, to give some direction to federal agencies, a very narrow configuration of institutions. That is what the executive orders are. The other thing is they can be ceremonial.
Yes.
And talk about raising awareness about something in a ceremonial way, declaring this is hot dog day. They can do that through executive order. We are seeing the executive order being used outside the authority of the office of the president. And much of the language that is written within these executive orders, I won't say much, that's an exaggeration maybe, but the combination of the types of language that's used, we see in any given executive order, you are likely to see language which is within the authority of the office of the president to issue. Suggestive language that has no strength of law, but doesn't necessarily violate his authority, but doesn't necessarily bear with it the strength of law. So an influence statement. And then there are statements which absolutely violate the law. And on any given EO, on any given executive order, you're likely to find 2 or more of these kinds of languages in there. And I think that is another part of the chaos and confusion, because people don't know how to respond to language that is either suggestive but not within the authority, or violating a statute or a law?
Well, Holly, and I also think one of the things that is happening is because the language that is suggestive and the language that violates the law, normally everyday people wouldn't be paying attention to it. But because it's often inflammatory and just downright racist, sometimes it's just downright wrong. And because it's all of those things, people don't know how to react. And so we now have people in a position, because the language of these executive orders touches, it's so broad and it's touching so many things that people are trying to figure it out in real time. There's also another layer to this, because some of the suggested language is not law and really doesn't have any more force of impact other than what they give it. But you still have to evaluate it up against federal law, and you have to, in some cases, evaluate it again up against state laws, because some of our states have enshrined in their constitutions and in their state laws certain rights as well. And so there's going to be a conflict there, and all of those things have to be hashed out. So I think, but it still goes back to the basic strategy. The strategy is chaos. And overwhelming people, because every advocacy group is stressed out. I mean, every group. I mean, there's an executive order that has hit everybody, and everybody is trying to mobilize and read and figure out what and figure out who they need to protect and how they need to protect them, or if they need to move, what they need to do. And I think a lot of it, some of the time, we are moving and we don't even need to move, but we don't know what to do. So we're moving. And, sometimes I just tell people, stop. Just stop and take a deep breath, because the goal is to overwhelm. And most people don't make good decisions under pressure. And given the amount of pressure that's being applied, there's a lot of people in crisis right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question, and I save it for the two lawyers because it's a technical question, but I'm seeing
I don't know. I don't know.
Because I'm seeing it so much.
I'm not going to just play one on this podcast.
Right. I'm only a lawyer on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Thursday, Tuesday or Thursday. I don't know what day it is, but whatever day it is, it's the day I'm not.
It's not today.
Not today.
I feel like I'm seeing this so much as a topic of conversation, especially amongst like folks my age, of how is he able to do these executive orders. I think we saw so much, and it's always in comparison to when President Biden tried to use executive orders in regards to student loans and reducing, if not eliminating them, and how that seemed to be so big. Or why haven't Democratic presidents essentially weaponized, because I think that's exactly what President Trump is doing, is weaponizing executive orders. Why haven't we done that? Why haven't Democrats used executive orders in the same way? Or, how is this possible?
Well, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Because, governing by executive order is relatively new. Now, we've had in cases where there are some presidents who did a whole lot of executive orders, but this governance by executive order is fairly new. One of the things that we have to remember, particularly about President Obama and President Biden, is part of what you're seeing against President Trump are groups coming in to challenge those executive orders. So almost the minute that President Obama or President Biden used their executive order, there was a lawsuit. Those lawsuits were often filed in jurisdictions where a Trump nominated judge, a Trump confirmed judge. If you look, a number of them came out of Texas, and they would issue these nationwide bans to enjoin those executive orders. And so what we saw were those executive orders, which weren't used back to back to back to back to back either. But as they were going through, particularly with the student loans, there was always an advocacy group on the other side of that fight, ready to go to court the minute that President Biden rolled out something. And there was often a judge that was willing to enjoin and stop that. And you would see it work its way through the court. President Biden won some of those battles, but he also lost some of those battles. And so, but they knew that those things, he had talked about that on the campaign trail. And while he was on the campaign trail, they said, we are going to fight you. They had mobilized. And so what people need to understand is there are fights that can be had. You can't sit on the sidelines. You need to get out and mobilize. What are those groups that are out here filing lawsuits and challenging the implementation of these executive orders? Those groups need support. Those groups need money. You just can't sit at home and say, well, I wish somebody would do something. Somebody is doing something. My question is, are you supporting the somebodies that are doing something? Are you actually looking for the information? There have been, at least when I looked the other day, over 75 lawsuits that have been filed. And there's probably more because I haven't checked in a couple of days. There are groups who are organizations that are filing lawsuits and challenging these almost up to 100 executive order. But are you helping them, or who's helping them? Understand how the fight against executive orders is leveraged, because that is not something that requires a congressional action. Now, Congress could act and say, hey, which happened in the case of Obama. Congress went in and was like, hold up. You're doing too much. And so they can pass a law that would get rid of that executive order. But the Republicans have the majority in the Senate, and they have the majority in the House. So the likelihood of that happening is slim to none. So the way to fight these executive orders are going to be in the court. And you have to remember, President Biden was able to get almost 230 judges appointed. Though that has had an impact on the balance of the court, because also remember that President Trump in his other term was able to appoint over 200 and something judges as well. And so, plus they have the Supreme Court, which has already jumped in on one of the fights over the executive orders. So, I'm a Star Trek fan. And in Star Trek, they have this chess game that's played where you like 3D chess, you're playing up here, and up here. Sometimes we playing on one level, and I'm trying to get folks to understand, baby, you got to be making moves on all these levels, because we've allowed the courts to be stacked in a way that prevents justice playing out in a fair and impartial manner. It's unbalanced in some ways, and that's a long story. That's a discussion for another day. But
we need to definitely have a whole conversation about the comparison of the 200 and something versus the 400 and something, because you're right, it has made a difference. And where I want to pick the conversation up is, and that's why we're starting to see stuff balance out now. And even with the Supreme Court, they basically have stayed out of it. And the one time that they have weighed in so far, one of the times they've weighed in 3 times, I think, but they've been in very discreet ways, very discreet, very narrow, and not with official opinions, but really about whether or not they're going to accept to review a case or just make a quick statement about something. And it's been, I won't say, it hasn't been damaging. It's been clarifying. More than damaging. Where I wanted the other thing to kind of go back to your question, I think that this is a moment where the emperor has no clothes. And this is one of my favorite stories, because it is the story of how influence is sometimes stronger than reality. That perception is stronger than reality. If you respond to something as if it is true, even if it is not true, it is true. Trump is walking out here with no authority on some of this. But because people are reacting and responding as if he has the authority, it makes the fact that he doesn't have the authority almost irrelevant, because you are responding to his non-authority declarations. You are allowing the influence to be more significant than the law. Why is that happening? Because people are afraid. And the first group of people that are afraid, I got news for y'all out there listening, ain't the Democrats. The first people that are afraid are the party formerly known as Republicans, now for me forever to be known as MAGAs. They have given up on their values. They have given up on their principles, and they have succeeded them all to the king of the MAGAs, Donald Trump. And he has eradicated the party formerly known as Republican. That's true. All of them live in the fear of what he might do to not support something that they care about, something being elected or whatever. And it is not just our elected folks, but it starts with them. But it includes a whole ecosphere of people that are afraid. The people who are letting us down right now isn't Democrats. The people who are letting us down right now are Republicans, not just because they agree with him, Trump, the administration, the executive orders, because the reality is they don't. They're letting us down because they are leading the example of how to respond when you are freaking afraid. True. That is what is the real deal. So the next time you open your mouth because you are not happy that the Democrats that you did not vote to put in power or in the White House ain't doing what you think they should be doing, understand that the top of the fear model comes from the Republicans that are afraid to express any level of opinion dissent. At least the Democrats have the bravery to challenge not only Trump, but each other. Now, does that always end well? No. But nope. They are not kowtowing to one perspective, one idea, and in support of giving up literally the republic in favor of an oligarchy type system. So that is what I think we need to understand about where we sit with these executive orders.
Right.
It's chaos of fear, but the fear culture is started and being led by Republicans, not Democrats.
Because if they wanted to stop it, they could. They have the votes.
Offer a different perspective. If they wanted to have a conversation about, is this the best way to move ahead, they could. If they wanted to save them people jobs, hundreds and thousands of federal workers who are out of work, if they wanted to make sure that the impact of having those people out of work, the impact that it has on the American public from from agriculture to USAID and everything in between, from federal parks to veterans to Medicaid to prescription drugs to Social Security to SNAP benefits to the grants that we give to our important NGOs that are helping to serve and protect and take care of people, from cancer research that's happening. All they need to do is just even ask a question. But Republicans are scared
as hell.
As hell. So that part, bam, as my business says, bam.
And you are absolutely right. I mean, you have seen even in just the little time that this administration and this Congress has been in session, the minute that someone bucks and says anything, they are called on the carpet. I remember watching when they had the Speaker of the House vote, and there were 3 votes that weren't going to vote for Mike Johnson. They held the vote open. They called those folks back. I saw them walk out the room. They came back in and changed them votes. And that they are literally muscling people. Anybody who quibbles on anything is immediately called on the carpet. So they are living in absolute fear. They're going to primary me. They're going to harass me. They're going to turn folks, the social media mob is going to be on me. And that's just the light stuff. There's, I read an article recently with one of the senators saying that they had mentioned that they weren't sure if they were going to vote on one of the nominees. And the FBI came to their house and said, we have credible death threats against you. So they are absolutely, as Holly said, living in fear. They get on TV and they talk a good game, but them jokers scared of hell.
Yes.
That's why so many of them walked away and did not run.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they didn't want to deal with this.
That's right.
So, but what I would also say to folks is if that is how Republicans are living, understand that ecosystem is not skipping over Democrats. They may not say it, but they're absolutely being harassed. They're absolutely getting death threats. They're absolutely getting all of the same treatment. They're just stepping up to the camera and choosing to fight anyway. And I think,
and I don't want to get too deep into Democrats because that's going to be a whole nother show. But I do take your point in terms of that we need to recognize what the fear and intimidation tactics really look like, because the other group, because nobody is escaping the MAGA bully stick.
That's my point.
Yeah.
I just put the long way around.
The media is being bullied.
Yes.
Corporations are being bullied. Democrats are being bullied. Republicans are being bullied. Independents are being bullied. You know,
everyday people
are being bullied. Federal workforce is being bullied. There really are very few people that are not subject to this entire bully situation. And I think it's important for us to understand that, because the way that people are seeking to survive their we need to recognize, I'm not even going to use the word bully. I'm going to say it like this. Imagine that the entire country is under the directive of a domestic abuser, and we are all the victims.
Mm-hmm.
And there is one person and his minions that are carrying out his order, but even they are operating under a fear, right? They are showing up and doing the things because they are afraid he gonna beat them next. So in order to escape being beat, and these are very normal human reactions. I didn't say they were good human reactions, but these are very normal human reactions. I see somebody that's beating up on everybody. How do I escape being beat? Oh, I'll go help him beat people. This is the kind of thing we saw in slavery, where Black people were helping the master because that at least meant they didn't get beat, their families didn't get beat. What are other reactions that happened during slavery? Some people went and hid. Some people changed. Some Black people said, you know what, I'm gonna just be white. And they hid, which is what we see some of these corporations doing. We know we still got to deal with different cultures and different people, but we can't tell y'all that no more, because we need to hide ourselves too, because we're being victimized. And we got to operate differently. Now, that's for another show. The next show, not the next one, but a future show. How about that? A future show, we'll have the discussion about how you operate in the culture of fear. As a matter of fact, I suspect that many of our shows this year will be a commentary on how to show up when you are being bullied, when you are being abused, when you are being sent back to a form of master versus slave, where you are sent back to a mentality of an oligarchy as opposed to a democracy. And I think we're starting to see the real impacts of that. And so I think we can carry this theme of fear probably through the next several shows, and hopefully maybe through the whole year of shows, because people, the way people are showing up is in fear. And that's something that we haven't in modern politics had to think about as much as we have to think about it now. There's always been a little intimidation, of course. There's always been a bullying factor, but it has never been the predominant narrative. It has never been the thing that overshadows and colors everything, which means everybody is acting differently. And it almost feels like another pandemic. And this is the pandemic of the Trump administration.
Well, with that, Ms. Holiday, what call to action do you have for our sisterhood?
Oh, wow. Okay. This is a good question, Simone. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you what I'm on. And if you keep listening to our podcast, and I hope you do, I reserve the right to amend and update these calls to actions. But I was in a session earlier today, and I've kind of been saying this, but she said it better. Melissa Bradley said it better. First and foremost, stack some cash. I'm not necessarily talking about put it in the mattress kind of cash. I'm saying make sure that you have a savings. Make sure maybe several savings. Make sure that you have liquid assets that will allow you to survive through a worst case scenario for your life as much as you possibly can, which means that this may not be the year to take 5 vacations. This may not be the year to invest in all your Gucci purses. This may not be the year that you take on extraordinary debt. So I would say really think about your finances, especially in terms of savings. But if you can't do savings, then definitely focus on eliminating as much debt as possible. The second thing I'm going to, the second thing I'm going to offer is think about how you prepare yourself for what is next. Because the other thing I could say is this environment of fear, this environment of chaos and destruction is temporary. Not just to this administration, but as an American people, I really am betting that our culture is just simply too strong to allow ourselves to be subjugated to this level of fear, chaos, and destruction for very long. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a war on our soils since 1865. And that is because we choose not to. And while we have horrific acts of violence, I think that this culture is going to rise up and prevent us from getting to the point where we are so fearful that we are at war, physical, real war with each other. And then the final thing I would say is that means that there will be an opportunity to build it back. And not necessary, and that's the opportunity for us to change it and remix it and switch it up or invent it. And so I think as you are thinking about what's next and something else will be next, think about the services that we need in our community, that we would be better off if we had maybe not the entire market, but if we had a toehold. Do we own enough real estate? Do we have enough access and ownership in our financial services? Should we be looking at ways that we own food distribution? Should we be looking at stores like where that only house our own brands? So we're creating our own big box moment. Should we manage and control travel or energy? We should be thinking about how we are investing in the things that we need to survive as a community and doing so together. And I think that's my final word. My final word is find you a collective. I don't care if it's a book collective and y'all just sit around and read, but do not go through this alone. Do not sit in your house by yourself and wonder what can happen next. Find you a community. Find you a collective of people who are all working together to survive today and thrive tomorrow. That's what I have to say, Simone. What about y'all?
Miss Moon, what you got for us?
Well, I think Sister Holiday hit upon it most. One of the things that I have been encouraging is community. Call and check on your people and evaluate your moves. Really start thinking deeply, because it really doesn't matter. I don't want to say it that way. We are going to have an outcome that things are going to look very different. And we need to be prepared for that change. And so I think for us, we do need to, this is a time of evaluation and preparing. And also what Holly said, building. Because if things are going to be torn to the ground and burned to the ground, what happens next? What do we need to make what happens next? Who do we need to make what happens next. And I think there are enough of us to make it happen. Holly has been talking, we've had these conversations about capacity. And, one of the things that she made me realize is we don't really have a capacity problem. We have a connection problem. Because if we get connected, there's enough of us with the tools and the skills and the resources and the funding that we can do some stuff. We just need to get connected in a way that we can make that happen. And I think what's happening now is going to make people reflect in a way that they haven't had to reflect. In our political system, I think people have had the opportunity to play, because there was always a group that was going to go to the polls and ensured and that outcomes happen, or even if they weren't in the majority, they were working to keep the bad outcomes from happening as much as it could. I think that time is over. Sometimes you have the ability to take a gap year. Our voters took a gap year, and baby, they coming back and the house has been burned to the ground. So now they got to figure out what they're going to do. And I think going forward, people are going to evaluate these choices very, very differently. The last thing is, I think that because, again, like going back to the executive orders, they're touching so many things that there are people who normally don't pay attention is paying attention to what's happening. Everybody's cheese is being moved. Everybody's cheese is being moved. And there are people evaluating choices. There are people reevaluating choices. There are people in planning mode, because they're just now realizing what this all means. But everybody's cheese is getting moved. And so there are some people who didn't think about politics that's thinking about politics today.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Come on, take us home. I'm sorry. Were you?
I will. I will keep it short.
Out. So now it's you. You get to wrap us up. You got the hard job.
All righty. I'll keep it short. If I had a call to action, I think very much y'all hit on so much, especially throughout this episode. And one thing that really stood out was we're in this position based on where we have different folks in positions of power. And a lot of that comes back to who we vote for and how we help these people, good and bad, that do the things that they do, essentially get into these positions. And I think in this kind of off year where we have some elections, I think we have to eliminate this notion that we have off years because of the elections that we have and the impact that they have long term. So I would say, y'all hit on everything we need to do personal. I think once again, it is how we show up. This election showed us that showing up matters. I think that the executive orders and whether or not the courts are upholding them, remaining silent, whether or not Congress and members of Congress on either side are silent, and how that looks, I think that comes back to the people that we place there. So I think we have to be far more intentional and taking that time to make sure we're placing people in positions of power that need to be there, that will benefit us in the long term.
Yeah.
And so stay calm while the goal is to overwhelm and create this sense of fear and create this feeling of chaos and whatnot, of not losing sight of what the goal is here. So with that, we are season 2 here, up and going, ready. Catch us next week. Thank you all for joining us this week on season 2, episode 2, the new administration, executive orders. We have Clapback, gave y'all the facts, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week.
Yes.
Bye, ladies.
Thank you for joining us here on Clapback Get the Facts podcast. We hope that you're leaving feeling more informed and ready to provide others with the facts. We would love to hear your biggest takeaways from this episode. So post the show on your Instagram story and tag us at Sisters Lead. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, please leave a review so others can get some sense of the facts that we're providing. Finally, if you would like to learn more about local resources and other projects we're working on, go to sistersleadsistersvote.org.